My name is Lauren Fields, I'm 34, and today should have felt like a dream come true. After 3 years of side gigs, solder burns, and late-night drywall tutorials, I finally bought a house. But as I stood in the entryway of my freshly painted bungalow, the one I rebuilt with my own 2 hands, all I could think about was whether my sister would respect the no shoes on the rug ruler stormin' like she always does. Funny how success doesn't quiet the anxiety. It just gives it crown molding. Before I tell you what happened at the party, drop a comment if you've ever braced yourself for family drama at your own celebration. Because what my sister pulled in front of 30 guests made it crystal clear. Some people don't show up to support you, they show up to claim what they think they deserve. Let me take you back a few hours, before the doorbell rang, when I still thought this housewarming might actually feel warm. The morning sun poured through the kitchen window, hitting the quartz countertop just right soft, gold, like it understood what this moment meant to me. I stood there, barefoot, holding a cup of coffee I hadn't had time to drink, staring out at the backyard I'd cleared one weed at a time. My house. Mine. Not rented, not borrowed, not crashing on someone's couch. Just mine. I'd painted every wall, rewired every outlet. The banister oak, slightly crooked when I moved in, was now sanded, stained, and sturdy. It looked like it belonged. Some days, I still wasn't sure I did. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the ceramic mug like it had something urgent to say. Mom. I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what she wanted, because I did. Still, I answered. Hey, I said, careful to keep the tone light. Oh, good, you picked up. I wasn't sure you'd be too busy with all your little preparations. Oh? That little landed like it always did, with just enough sugar to make the insult sound like concern. I've been up since 6, I said, wiping the counter for the 3rd time. Everything's just about ready. Megan and I were talking, well, mostly Megan, and she was wondering if it'd be all right to bring the boys. There it was. I turned toward the dining room, eyeing the rug I'd just vacuumed. Cream-colored. My one splurge. I imagined muddy sneakers and crayon smudges and juice boxes left to sweat into the floorboards. They weren't on the guest list, I said, keeping my voice calm. Well, they're family, and they've never seen your home. Besides, where else are they going to go today? Eric's working, and Megan's barely had time to catch her breath lately. You know how hard she has it. I bit the inside of my cheek. Every event, every moment, somehow circled back to Megan. Her exhaustion. Her sacrifices. Her hard life in the house Mom co-signed while I was eating dollar noodles in a rented studio that smelled like cat pee. It's just. There'll be a lot of adults here. Industry people. Friends from the channel. Not exactly a kid zone. Mom sighed like I was being impossible. They'll stay out of the way, and it'd mean so much to Megan. And that's when I felt it, that familiar tug between pride and peacekeeping. Between holding my boundary and not wanting to be the villain in my own story. I leaned against the counter, the tile cool beneath my arms. Out the window, I could see the porch swaying gently in the breeze, even though no one sat on it. Maybe that was the metaphor right there. Fine, I said. They can come. I could almost hear Mom smile. That's my girl. After we hung up, I stared at my reflection in the oven door. I didn't look like a girl. I looked like a woman who'd learned to fix broken things except the parts inside her that still expected to be steamrolled. The doorbell rang a few minutes later, and my best friend Danny walked in with a box of champagne flutes and a bunch of wildflowers tied with string. You okay? She asked, reading my face like a blueprint. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. She set the flutes down and gave me a look that said she didn't buy it. Let me guess, Megan's coming. And the kids, I added. Surprise. Danny didn't say, I told you so. She just plucked a daisy from the bunch and stuck it in the mason jar centerpiece. They're gonna track mud on your rug, she said gently. I know. She handed me a flute. Then let's at least toast it first. I clinked my glass against hers, took a sip, and tried not to think about all the shoes that were about to walk through my front door. I wiped down the kitchen counter again, even though it was already spotless. The granite was cool under my palm, grounding me as the sound of party platters being arranged drifted in from the living room. Danny had moved on to lining up champagne flutes, humming to herself like nothing was out of place. But inside me, everything was shifting, tightening. It was just a housewarming. Just one afternoon. But it felt like I'd invited old ghosts in through the front door. I walked over to the credenza near the dining room and opened the top drawer. Inside was the photo album I hadn't touched in years. I wasn't sure why I pulled it out. Maybe I needed a reminder of how far I'd come or how far I'd been pushed. The photo on top was from my 14th birthday. I was kneeling in the yard next to Dad's busted lawnmower, grease on my cheek, holding up a spark plug like it was some kind of trophy. I'd asked for a new backpack that year. Mom gave me a plastic jewelry set from the dollar store instead, more appropriate for a girl. But Dad let me take apart the mower, and, for once, no one told me I was being difficult. My fingers grazed the edge of the photo, but I didn't take it out. I didn't need to. The memory was already blooming in my chest, sharp and familiar. Growing up, Megan was the sweet one. The delicate one. She got curls and compliments and a canopy bed. I got chores. She got fussed over when she cried. I got asked what I did to provoke it. I didn't know the word scapegoat back then. But I knew what it felt like to apologize for things I hadn't done. By the time I was in high school, Mom had fully leaned into her church circle, the kind where godliness got measured in casserole dishes and family image. Megan fit that world like a glove. I didn't. I remember coming home from school one day, covered in sweat and sawdust from the shop class project I stayed late to finish. Brenda took one look at me and said, "Honey, you're never going to catch a husband looking like you build fences for a living." That was the first time I thought, maybe I don't want one. The microwave beeped, pulling me out of the memory. I hadn't even realized I'd put something in there. A plate of mini quiches spun in slow circles, steam clouding the door. Danny appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding a roll of twine and a bag of clothespins. "Thinking of hanging the photo line by the windows," she said. "That still work?" I nodded, clearing my throat. "Yeah, good idea." She gave me a quick look. "You okay?" "Peachy." Her eyebrow went up, but she let it go. That was the thing about Danish, didn't push, just made space for truth when I was ready to hand it over. I picked up the photo again, finally holding it to the light. The grease smudge under my eye, the smirk that said I knew something no one else did, how engines worked, how tension belts fit, how to make things run again. Mom hated that photo. Said it made me look unladylike. But I kept it. Because it was the first time I saw myself clearly. The doorbell rang. My stomach clenched. "I got it," Danny said, already heading down the hall. Voices filtered in, neighbors, early guests. Not the problem ones. Not yet. I placed the photo on the fridge, pinning it with the only magnet I kept, a crooked heart made from scrap copper I welded in trade school. It wasn't pretty. But it held. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and polite laughter. Friends from my YouTube channel arrived with houseplants and local cider. My financial advisor brought her partner and a lemon cake. Even the elderly couple next door popped in to compliment the porch railing. Everything looked like it belonged in a Southern living spread. No one would guess how tightly I was holding myself together. At 3:45, my phone buzzed again. "Mom." "On the way. Megan's boys are so excited." I stared at the emoji longer than I should have. That stupid smiling face felt like a dare. Danny glanced at my screen. "Want me to head them off with a traffic cone?" I huffed a breath through my nose. Let's just get it over with." She touched my arm gently. "It's your house, Lore. You don't owe them the front porch, let alone the whole living room." I nodded. But my mouth still said, "I know," the way it always did when I didn't. As I moved toward the front of the house, I passed the fridge again. My younger self stared back at me from behind a magnet heart. Grease on her face. Fire in her eyes. I touched the edge of the photo. Then I opened the door. The smell hit me before I even dropped my backpack. Overcooked noodles and day-old marinara. Lasagna. Again. It was the smell of "we didn't plan anything," of "you can heat it up yourself." And for some reason, that night, it hit me harder than usual. I walked into the kitchen and saw Mom and Megan hunched over a stack of papers at the table. Neither of them looked up. "There's some in the fridge if you're hungry," Mom said, scribbling something. I paused. "Okay, what's all that?" Megan sighed, already irritated. "Mortgage stuff." "Fa?" She didn't answer. Just shifted the stack toward Mom and went back to tapping her pen. That's when I saw it. My name on a manila folder halfway down the stack. I stepped closer. "Wait, why is my college paperwork in there?" Mom looked up. Not surprised. Not sheepish. Just calm. Like she'd been rehearsing this moment. "We were going to talk to you about that." Her tone was too even. It made my skin crawl. Megan didn't wait. "Eric and I found a place. It's out near the lake, 3 bedrooms, room for the boys to have their own space." My mouth went dry. Mom added, "It's a great neighborhood, good schools. But the market's tight, and Eric's bonus wasn't what they hoped, so." I looked from one to the other, still not understanding. Then Mom said it. Flat, practiced. "We're going to need your college fund for the down payment." The room went quiet. The lasagna, the worn-out linoleum under my shoes, the whir of the dishwasher, it all faded. "What?" I asked. "You've got scholarships," Megan said, like she was being helpful. "Community college is fine. You can transfer later, once things settle." My stomach dropped. That fund Dad started it when I was 8. It was supposed to cover what scholarships didn't for. It was mine. My one safety net. "You said it was untouched." Well, now things are different," Mom said, already moving back to the papers. "But it's mine." "Don't be selfish, Lauren." Megan gave me that pitying look she'd mastered. "We have 3 kids. Where are they supposed to sleep on top of each other? Benjamin's still waking up at night." I stared at them, trying to figure out when I'd lost the right to my own future. "I've worked 2 jobs to keep my grades up. I have a 4.0. "You can take out loans like everybody else," Megan snapped. "We have a mortgage. That's life." "No," I said. It came out quiet, but it was the only word I had. Mom blinked. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated, louder this time. Mom's voice hardened. "This isn't up for discussion. Your sister has a family to think about. And I have a future to build." I felt something shift inside me. A line snapping. Years of being the reasonable one, the quiet one, the afterthought, they all snapped, just like that. I deserved to go to college. All bling. "You don't need to leave town to do that," Mom shot back. "You could stay here, live at home, save money." Live at home. Where silence followed every disagreement, and guilt showed up in every casserole dish. Number. That third no felt like steel in my spine. Megan rolled her eyes. "You've never had real responsibility. You don't get it. I've worked since I was 15. Don't talk to me about responsibility." Mom stood now, arms crossed. "You can either support this family or figure it out on your own. You're 18 now." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. But somehow, I managed to say, "Then I guess I'll figure it out." The next hour was a blur. Me in my room. A duffel bag. My laptop. Toiletries. The envelope with my social security card and birth certificate. I left the picture frames on the dresser. They didn't feel like mine anymore. Mom tried Ansa stood in my doorway and said, "Sleep on it." But I was already zipped up, already gone in my mind. I carried my bag through the kitchen. Past the cold lasagna. I didn't touch it. The front door clicked shut behind me, and the night swallowed everything. The first night, I parked behind the Dollar General. I figured it would be quiet. Out of the way. But around 1 a.m., some guy tapped my window with a flashlight and told me I couldn't sleep there. I moved to the 24-hour laundromat across town. Kept the seat reclined just enough that no one could tell if I was napping or waiting on a spin cycle. It wasn't warm, but it was lit. And after the second night, that counted for something. My car smelled like stale coffee and polyester from my barista uniform. The trunk was stuffed with everything I owned: school notebooks, a secondhand toolkit, one pair of steel toe boots, and a cracked plastic tote of toiletries that rattled every time I braked. I didn't cry. I thought I would. But the tears didn't come. Not that night. Not for a while. I think I was too stunned. Or maybe just too tired. The worst part wasn't even the sleeping in the car. It was pretending during the day that nothing had changed. At work, I poured lattes like always. Smiled when regulars complimented my latte art, even though my hands shook from barely sleeping. I still made it to my afternoon shift tutoring high school sophomores in math. And I kept showing up to my night class at the community tech center, where I was learning how to safely handle refrigerants. I just didn't tell anyone where I went when the lights turned off. Showering became a puzzle. There was a Planet Fitness with a student discount a few towns over, and I scraped together the sign-up fee from tip money. I timed my gym visits during the slowest hours, hoping no one would notice I didn't work out, just went straight to the showers. Straight to the sink where I'd scrub my barista uniform by hand and dry it under the hand dryer. It became routine. Sad, but routine. One morning, after barely 3 hours of sleep, I fell asleep in the back corner of the library, face down in a book about electrical circuits. When I woke up, my professor, Ms. Hardy, was sitting across from me. She didn't ask why I looked like hell. Just handed me a granola bar and said, "These diagrams will make more sense when you're not running on fumes." I nodded, eyes burning, but still said nothing. That's how it was. Everyone assumed I was just overworked, like any other broke student. And I let them think that. Because the truth felt humiliating. One night, I filmed myself fixing a broken table I'd pulled from a dumpster behind a church. I don't even know why I did it. I guess I wanted proof. Proof that I still knew how to build something, that I wasn't just surviving. I used my phone flashlight and set it on a stack of milk crates. The video was grainy, the sound terrible. But there I was disassembling, sanding, replacing a corner bracket, staining it dark walnut. No one saw that video. I didn't even post it. Just saved it in a folder labeled, maybe. That word meant something to me. Because even when you have nothing, maybe is still a kind of hope. One night, I was parked in the back of the gym lot after closing. I had a headache and a low battery and exactly $2 in my wallet. My stomach growled as I brushed crumbs off the passenger seat. A knock on my window startled me. I jumped instinctively, reaching for the steering wheel, but it wasn't a cop. It was Sherry, the night desk lady from Planet Fitness. She motioned for me to roll the window down. "You left your water bottle," she said, holding it up. Then, after a pause, added, "And this." She handed me a brown paper bag. Inside were a granola bar, a bag of trail mix, and a banana. My throat tightened. "I'm not judging," she said gently. "Just figured everyone deserves a snack now and then." I wanted to thank her, to explain, to say something. But all I managed was, "Thanks." After she left, I sat there for a long time, holding that bag like it might fall apart if I breathed too hard. It was the first time in days I felt seen. Not judged, not pitied, just seen. I peeled the banana slowly, ate it in silence, and watched the gym sign flicker above me. That moment didn't fix anything. But it softened something sharp inside me. And that night, for the first time since walking out of Mom's house, I slept for 6 straight hours. I met Danny at a free HVAC safety training hosted at the rec center. I almost didn't go. My barista shift ended late, and I was so tired my fingers ached. But it was one of the few events that didn't require a registration fee, and I'd run out of reasons to say no to free learning. The room smelled like burnt coffee and old extension cords. A dozen of us sat in plastic chairs while an older guy talked about circuit loads and insulation gaps. I took notes on the back of a flyer someone left on the floor. Danny sat next to me, quiet at first. She looked like she belonged: black cargo vest, steel-toe boots, short curls tucked behind her ears. Not the kind of woman who talked to someone like me. But when I dropped my pen, she picked it up and said, "You're good at this, the way you watch." I blinked, caught off guard. Most folks look bored by now. You look like you're mapping out a whole house in your head. I laughed once, small and surprised. Maybe. That was it. Just a moment. But it stayed with me. At the end of the night, the instructor offered to let people borrow equipment to practice wiring a basic porch light circuit. I stood near the door, unsure if I should ask. Then Danny nudged me. "Come by my place tomorrow. I've got the setup and an extra board." I didn't answer right away. She must have seen the hesitation, because she added, "No pressure, just an option." Either. The next day, I showed up. She lived in a craftsman bungalow tucked off a tree-lined street, the kind of place with wind chimes on the porch and potted herbs near the steps. It smelled like lavender and soldering metal. Like work and rest lived in the same space. I hovered on the welcome mat, heart pounding. This wasn't the kind of door I was used to knocking on. She opened it and handed me a bottle of cold tea without a word. That's when I knew she wasn't going to interrogate me. Inside, the wiring board sat on her kitchen island. Neat, ready, waiting. We spent 2 hours walking through the setup. She corrected my grip once, praised my soldering twice, and didn't flinch when I burned my thumb. When we finished, she said, "Want to keep it?" I blinked. "What?" "The light. Take it, hook it up in your car, if you want. Remind yourself you're not broken." That's when my throat closed. She didn't know I was sleeping in my car. Or maybe she did. I wrapped the fixture in an old hoodie and tucked it in my backpack. "Before I left," she said, "you ever need a safe spot, the porch light stays on." I nodded, eyes stinging. Still didn't answer. 2 nights later, it poured. Like the sky couldn't hold its grief anymore. The gym was closed early for maintenance. I sat in my car, soaked and shivering, teeth chattering so loud I couldn't think. I remembered Danny's porch. And I drove. I almost turned around twice. Almost kept going. But something in me said enough. When I pulled up, her porch light was still on. I stood in the rain for a full minute before I knocked. She opened the door in sweats, hair messy, a mug in her hand. "Got caught in it, huh?" She said like I'd been there a dozen times. I just nodded. She handed me a towel, pointed to the guest room down the hall, and said, "Shoes off, floors are old." No lecture. No look of pity, just space. The room had a twin bed with a navy quilt. A nightstand with a salt lamp. Nothing fancy. But it smelled like eucalyptus and safety. I sat on the edge of the bed, towel around my shoulders, shivering. On the dresser sat the porch light fixture I'd wired. She'd plugged it in. The bulb glowed a soft yellow, warm and steady. I stared at it until my chest hurt. No one had ever kept something I made like it mattered. I climbed under the quilt. Let my muscles relax, inch by inch. And for the first time in weeks, I slept in a bed. Not because I earned it. Not because I paid for it. But because someone left the light on for me and meant it. Danny never treated me like a guest. She didn't hover or offer long talks about healing or survival. She just made sure I had space and a working sink, and didn't flinch when I forgot to say good morning for 3 days straight. I spent the first week sleeping more than I thought humanly possible. Then one morning, I woke up and my bones didn't feel like cinder blocks. I sat up, stretched, and realized for the first time in what felt like forever I wasn't bracing for the world to come crashing in. There was no knock on the door. No text from Mom. No passive-aggressive comment waiting at the breakfast table. Just the smell of fresh coffee and bread baking. And the low hum of someone sanding wood out on the back deck. I followed the sound and found Danny in worn jeans and work gloves, stripping the finish off a dresser. The wood underneath was scratched and soft, but not ruined. She didn't look up when she spoke. "Want to grab the orbital sander?" That was how it started. I didn't mean to stay busy. I didn't have a plan. but my hands needed something to do. And Danny's house, well, it had charm, but also creaky doors, sagging cabinets, and 2 decades of postponed maintenance. So I sanded and patched and glued and painted. Danny never said thank you. But she'd leave folded drop cloths on the porch, or a box of donated hinges by the coffee pot. She saw me. Not as a guest. Not as a project. As a person who knew how to fix things. That small shift changed everything. By the 3rd week, I started filming again. Just little clips. Quiet stuff. Me tightening a hinge, replacing a warped drawer slide. Restoring a busted porch chair I found near the curb. I didn't post them. But I saved them in a folder on my phone called Proof. The Clays. Because some days, I still needed it. One Saturday, I was sanding the railings on Danny's front steps when I heard a kid's voice behind me. "Are you the fixer lady?" I turned. A girl maybe 8 stood with her mom on the sidewalk, holding a pink scooter with a bent wheel. "I saw your light," she said, pointing to the porch fixture I'd wired a month earlier. "Mom said you made it work again." Her mom smiled, a little sheepish. "We live around the corner, sorry if she's bothering you. That light used to blink like crazy." She noticed it stopped. I knelt down. "You're not bothering me." The girl held up the scooter. "It doesn't turn right. Do you think it's broken forever?" I took it gently, turning the wheel, watching how it moved. A small stone was lodged in the front bearing. "Nah," I said. "Just stuck." Her eyes lit up like I'd handed her a new puppy. When they left, Danny appeared behind me with 2 glasses of iced tea. "You've got fans now," she said, handing one over. I shrugged, trying to brush it off, but I couldn't stop smiling. Not the small, polite smile I gave customers back when I was making lattes. This one felt real. That night, I opened my laptop and started editing one of the clips. Just a short one restoring a thrift store cabinet. I added captions and sped up the footage. Added a little music I found for free online. When I hit save, I didn't label it maybe. I labeled it EP01. And calm. Didn't post it. Not yet. But I watched it back twice, and it felt like the first brick in something solid. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from stress, but from something else. Energy. Purpose. I slipped out to the porch and sat under the fixture, the one I'd wired, the one Danny had insisted I keep. The wind was soft. The light was warm. And I didn't feel like a visitor anymore. I felt home adjacent. Still cautious. Still figuring it out. But for the first time since I walked out of Mom's house, I wasn't surviving. I was starting to build. I never meant to go viral. There was no flashy breakdown video. No tearful how I got here confession. Just a sped-up clip of me restoring a cracked clawfoot tub I found outside a condemned duplex. The title was simple, "Don't Trash It, Patch It." The comments came in slow at first. Then faster. People weren't just watching, they were staying. Asking questions, sharing stories. Thanking me for making them feel less alone. A year later, I hit 100,000 subscribers. It didn't feel real. Not when the plaque showed up in the mail. Not when sponsorships started trickling in. Not even when the first check landed in my account with more zeros than I'd seen in my whole bank history combined. Danny made me a lemon cake the night I got the plaque. She didn't make a big deal. Just slid it onto the kitchen counter with a note that said, "You built this, and it's not made of borrowed nails." I still keep that note. The money helped, sure. But more than that, it gave me something I never had growing up. Leverage. For the first time, I didn't need anyone's approval. Didn't have to justify what I wanted. Which is why, when the little white craftsman house on Juniper Street went up for sale, I walked in for the open house with a clipboard, a flashlight, and no one to call for permission. It was a mess. Roof leak. Water damage in the guest bath. Peeling linoleum from the Reagan era. But I didn't flinch. I could see past it. Because I knew how to fix things. The realtor tried to talk me out of it, said I was ambitious for a single buyer. I smiled, handed her my pre-approval letter, and said, You should see my sledgehammer swing. 2 months later, the keys were mine. I stood on the porch the night I closed, staring at the crooked steps and the porch light that barely worked. And I cried. Not the sobbing, cathartic kind. Just a few slow tears that came out sideways while I ran my fingers along the worn banister. This was mine. No one could take it. No one could say I didn't earn it. No one could steal the deed while I was at school. Still, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "But what if they tried?" I shook it off and walked inside. The floorboards creaked, but they held, just like me. I filmed every part of the renovation, from stripping wallpaper to rewiring the outlets. I did it all myself with help from local friends, old students, a couple of viewers who lived nearby and offered their time in exchange for pizza and a few tooltips. Each video was raw. Real. Me in dusty overalls, hair in a bun, arms sore but steady. And people kept watching. I started getting emails from women in their 40s and 50s divorced, starting over, relearning how to hold a power drill. One wrote, "You don't just fix wood. You remind me I can rebuild, too." Obes. I printed that one and taped it above my workbench. By the time the front porch was redone and the kitchen cabinets were hung, I started thinking, maybe this wasn't just a house. Maybe it was a blueprint. For a life that wasn't borrowed or begged for. A life I chose. I was patching the baseboards in the dining room when my phone buzzed. Mom. The name alone felt like a lightning strike through glass. I hadn't heard from her in nearly 4 years. The message was short. Heard you bought a house. Megan and the boys would love to see it. Hope you're well. There was no apology. No mention of what they took. No reference to where we left things. Just a casual, "We'd love to visit," like we were still having Sunday potlucks and pretending everything was fine. I stared at the screen for a long time. And for a moment, just a flicker, I felt it. That old reflex to respond. To explain. To prove I hadn't built all this out of spite. But then I looked up. At the crown molding I'd installed with my own hands. At the porch light brighter than ever. At the work gloves drying by the sink. At the key I wore on a chain under my shirt, the one I'd had engraved with the date of closing. I didn't respond. Not that day. Maybe not ever. Because the truth is, me house didn't need to be a museum for anyone else's guilt. It was mine. Every beam, every screw, every light bulb. And if they came knocking, I already knew which door I'd open. And which ones I'd keep locked. They showed up 45 minutes early. I was still setting out the last of the appetizers when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell. A knock. Like they didn't want to wait for permission. I glanced at Danny, who was tying a ribbon around the mason jar centerpiece. She raised an eyebrow. Want me to answer it? I wiped my hands on a dish towel. Number. It's fine. It wasn't fine. I opened the door to find Brenda holding a covered dish like it was a peace offering, and Megan wrangling 3 boys who immediately scattered onto my front lawn like someone fired a starter pistol. Thought we'd beat traffic, Mom said, stepping inside without waiting. Her shoes squeaked on the hardwood. I looked down. Wet soles. Mud. I've got a no shoes policy, I said quickly. Just helps keep the floors clean. Megan gave a little laugh like I'd told a joke. Oh, right. Pinterest rules. I forgot. She didn't bend down to remove her boots. Neither did Mom. I stayed frozen, dish towel still in my hand, watching dirt track into the house I'd stained and sealed myself. Danny appeared behind me with a dry smile. Shoes off or get the hose, she joked gently, and only then did Megan sigh and yank her boots off with exaggerated effort. The boys dropped them wherever. One landed sideways, muddy toe pointing at the fireplace. I bent down to straighten it. I don't know why. Reflex, maybe. That's a lot of glassware, Mom said, peering at the table. Hope nothing gets knocked over. It's not breakable, I lied. We hadn't even made it to the living room, and I already wanted to leave my own house. Megan took a lap around the space like she was doing an open house tour. Wow, she said. You really made this place work. The pause before work made my neck tense. She leaned into the kitchen. Is this marble? Quartz? I said. Oh, she replied, like I'd overspent. The boys thundered up the hallway. Guest rooms are that way, Megan asked, already following them. Not for today, I called after her. We're staying in the common areas. She didn't respond. I looked at Mom. You want anything? Tea? She waved her hand. Oh, I don't want to trouble you in your own home. That's what daughters are for. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Danny reappeared with paper cups and lemonade. God bless that woman. We made it through the first hour. Small talk. Compliments with hidden barbs. Mom eyeing every corner like she was measuring its potential. Then Megan circled back into the kitchen, balancing her youngest on her hip. You know, she said, this layout would be perfect for kids. All one level, open sightlines. I froze. Danny glanced at me. I stared at the floor. Megan smiled sweetly. I'm just saying, not all homes are so versatile. Vi. Before I could answer, her middle son ran in and grabbed my leg. Mom. I looked down. He was hugging me. Megan scoffed. Not me, silly. That's Auntie Lauren. He blinked. But she has the snacks. I laughed, because it was easier than crying. Inside, something cracked. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't invited them to measure my life like a room they wanted to repurpose. Mom walked over and touched the banister. This is new, huh? I sanded and stained it myself. She nodded. You always were handy. Not proud. Not impressed. Just noting it. Like a contractor marking updates before a sale. I took a breath, trying to reset. Then Megan looked around, hands on her hips. You really don't need all this space, do you? The words were soft. Almost kind. But they cut through the air like a blade. Danny put her cup down louder than necessary. I'm gonna check the backyard, she said, voice too calm. I couldn't speak. Because Megan wasn't just commenting. She was asking. Testing the ground. Planting the idea like she hadn't already thought it through. I looked at the rug under her boots, still damp from their arrival. The scuffed floor. The tablecloth that suddenly felt too fancy, like it didn't belong to me. And I remembered how it felt to sleep in a car. To count granola bars and hope the shift manager didn't notice I was using the break room to brush my teeth. Also, I could one day have a place like this. I cleared my throat. I need to check the oven, I said, turning before my voice cracked. In the kitchen, I leaned over an empty baking sheet and let my hands shake. She hadn't even asked yet. But I already knew what was coming. The clink of ice cubes and murmurs from the living room filled the silence while I stared at the oven door. I wasn't actually checking anything. The sheet pan was still empty. I just needed a buffer between me and whatever came next. When I finally turned around, Megan was standing in the archway like she owned the place. She held a glossy binder against her chest, spine cracked like it had been studied. She gave me that tight, practiced smile. Do you have a minute? I nodded, even though I didn't mean it. We moved to the dining room table. Danny caught my eye from across the room. She didn't say anything, but she didn't leave either. Megan opened the binder like she was about to walk me through a group project. A floor plan, some renovation estimates, and maps. Parcel lines. I blinked. What is this? She brushed a crumb off the page. Just some ideas, you know, in case you'd ever consider making the house work for you. Of sec. I didn't answer. Just stared. Megan took that as encouragement. There's a developer looking for family homes in the area. High interest. If you kept the title but leased it, say, to us, you'd still be protected financially. You'd even qualify for certain tax offsets. I leaned back slowly. You brought zoning materials to my housewarming. She laughed. Don't be dramatic, it's just a conversation. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't even sheepish. She was prepared. This wasn't a whim. She'd planned this. I glanced down. Her name was scribbled in the margin next to Minion, a printed deed diagram. That's when the doorbell rang again. A few more guests. I didn't move. Danny crossed the room, opened the door, took coats. Kept the background noise going so I didn't have to. Megan lowered her voice. The boys are growing fast. That condo we're in, it's a 2-bedroom. They can't keep sharing forever. And that's my problem because? She flinched like I'd slapped her. Wow, that's cold. I didn't blink. Brenda entered, holding a tray of lemonade, like she'd been waiting to cue her line. I know this is a lot, but think of how much this would help them, she said gently, setting the tray between us. Megan's been under so much stress lately. I stared at both of them. 2 women who'd taught me, over and over, that love was a transaction. One where I always paid the balance. I built this place, I said quietly. Every cabinet, every baseboard. I know, Megan said quickly. And it's beautiful. But Lauren, it's just space if no one's using it. You could keep filming somewhere else, Mom's house, even. I let that sit for a second. Then I pulled out my phone. Opened the Files app. Tapped twice. The screen lit up with a PDF of my deed. My name just minor right there at the top. I turned it toward them. You see that? Brenda peered over Megan's shoulder. This is legally mine. Not co-owned. Not jointly held. Mine. Megan frowned. You don't have to waive paperwork to prove your point. I set the phone down. I'm not waiving it. I'm protecting it. Brenda placed a hand on the table. You're still part of this family. We taught you to care for each other. No, I said. You taught me that my value depended on what I could give you. Megan scoffed. Don't act like this house makes you better than us. I stood up slowly. I don't think it makes me better. Then I paused. I think it finally makes me free. For the first time, they had no response. Danny stepped forward, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder. Everything okay here? She asked calmly. Megan closed the binder with a snap. Perfect, she said. We're just so proud of Lauren, aren't we, Mom? Brenda nodded, but her face was tight, pale. They left the binder behind. I didn't touch it. Later, after everyone had gone and the dishes were drying on the rack, I stood in the doorway of the guest room. The binder still sat on the corner of the table. Danny appeared beside me, sipping tea. Want me to toss it? I shook my head. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow. I didn't explain. Not because I couldn't, but because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe them one. The house was too quiet after they left. Even with Danny doing dishes in the background and music low in the other room, something about the silence felt heavier than usual. I walked through the hallway, picking up stray napkins and plastic cups like I was erasing evidence. But the air still held them, their voices, their assumptions, their dirty shoes and clipped words. I passed by the guest room. The binder was still there. I didn't touch it. Not because I was scared of it, but because I didn't need to prove anything to it anymore. But even as I moved through the house I built, I felt it. That old, familiar hum of guilt. Not the kind you feel when you've done something wrong. The kind you feel when you've finally done something right, but years of programming whisper. What if they're right anyway? I sat down at the dining table. The one I refinished with my own hands. My fingers traced the grain, smoothing over the same spots I'd sanded for hours. And then it started. One memory after another. Brenda standing in the kitchen with a tight smile, telling 8-year-old me that girls who fix things grow up bitter. Megan, crying over a B she barely earned while I got a 96 and was told, don't gloat. Thanksgiving, senior year me serving the pie I baked from scratch, only to hear Mom say, don't take this the wrong way, but Megan's was prettier. Okay. They hadn't changed. And maybe just maybe I hadn't fully either. Because even after everything, some part of me had hoped they'd show up and say, we were wrong. You did good. But they didn't. They never would. And now I had to make peace with that. A lump rose in my throat, sharp and deep. Not for them. But for the years I lost trying to earn what should have been mine without conditions. I stood up and walked to the living room, still in a daze, and spotted the blanket draped over the arm of the couch. It was the one Brenda crocheted when I moved out at 18. A rare gesture. Soft blue yarn, uneven in spots, but warm. Back then, I thought it meant love. Now, I realized it was her way of saying, I expect to be remembered every time you rest. I picked it up and held it for a beat. Then folded it neatly and placed it in the hallway closet. Not out of malice, just out of clarity. It didn't belong on the couch anymore. I belonged here. The house was mine. The work was mine. And whatever came next, that would be mine, too. I walked into my office, closed the door, and sat in front of the mic. It had been weeks since I recorded a voiceover. I'd had footage stacking up project walkthroughs, home tours, even a cabinet rescue from a thrift store nobody wanted. But I hadn't found the words. Until now. I clicked record. And for a few seconds, I just breathed. Then I said, "My name is Lauren Fields, and this is not a story about a house. It's a story about what happens when you stop giving pieces of yourself away in exchange for crumbs." I paused. The cursor blinked. My heart beat louder in my ears. I used to believe the things I built only mattered if someone else validated them. That approval made something real. But now I know, the work is real. The story is real. And I don't need to explain it to anyone who never listened. A tear rolled down my cheek and hit the edge of my keyboard. I didn't stop. I'm not filming this to expose anyone. I'm doing it to reclaim the part of me that always believed I had to shrink to be safe. I don't anymore. I clicked stop. Saved the file. Didn't post it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it existed. It was mine. Outside, the porch light flickered once, twice then held steady. That light was the first thing I ever rewired after leaving home. It had stayed lit through every version of me that followed. And in that moment, I finally understood. I didn't owe anyone the story they wanted. I only owed myself the truth. It took me a week to open the voiceover file again. Not because I was scared to hear it, but because I knew once I did, I'd have to let go of the version of me who needed to stay silent. The one who thought being strong meant staying small. I sat at my desk with the mic in front of me, same setup as always. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I opened the file, added the footage I'd been avoiding, clips of me repairing the dining room wall, resanding the banister. Megan smudged, rewiring the porch light. At the end, I dropped in the voiceover I'd recorded after they left. The one where I said, "I used to believe the things I built only mattered if someone else validated them. That approval made something real. But now I know. The work is real. The story is real. And I don't need to explain it to anyone who never listened." Oh. I hit upload. Then I closed the laptop and walked outside. The sun had just dipped past the trees. Porch light flickering on like it knew its cue. I leaned on the railing, arms crossed. The same railing I'd stained with my own hands, the same one my mother tapped without comment. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of notebook paper. It had lived at the back of an old toolbox for over a decade. I found it earlier that day while reorganizing the shed. The handwriting was mine around, a little uneven. 15 years old. At the top, in block letters. Things he'd say to Mom if he could do it without crying. I read it quietly, line by line. "You made me feel like I had to earn basic decency. I needed you to protect me, not compete with me. Just because I didn't cry doesn't mean I wasn't hurt. I'm not difficult. I was just never allowed to be soft. You always said I'd understand when I was older. I'm older now. And I understand you were wrong." I didn't cry reading it. Not this time. I folded it back up, pressed it to my chest for a moment, and then slipped it into the back of a picture frame behind a photo of the house, mid-renovation. Not to hide it, but to ground it. This house was built from all the things I never got to say. And now, the world could hear what I chose to say instead. By the time I woke the next morning, the video had 38,000 views. By lunch, it had over 200,000. The comment section turned into a digital quilt of people who'd felt the same: women who'd gone no contact with narcissistic parents, adult daughters who still carried guilt like a scar, even men who never quite healed from being told they weren't enough. One comment stood out. I thought I was alone. Until you gave me words I didn't know I needed. Thank you. I stared at that one for a long time. Danny knocked once and came in holding 2 mugs of tea. You've got people crying in 6 time zones. I smiled. Guess I'm someone's emotional trigger now. She sat beside me. You were honest. That's rarer than people realize. We sipped in silence. Then she asked, How do you feel? I looked out the window. The porch light blinked once, then steadied. Lighter, I said. Not because they changed, but because I finally stopped carrying their silence. That night, I filmed one more clip. Just me on the porch, holding the same light fixture I'd installed years ago. I took it down, cleaned it carefully, rewired the base, and then mounted it back in place. But this time, I didn't stop there. I added a plaque underneath. It read, For every girl who was told she took up too much space. I posted it the next morning with the caption, If you ever wondered whether your story mattered, it does. You do. Keep the light on. And for the first time, I didn't brace for backlash. I didn't wonder what Mom would say. Or if Megan would twist my words. I just let it be true. Because it was. And because maybe, just maybe, someone else needed a porch light, too. It's funny what you start noticing once the noise goes quiet. Not the noise of traffic, or guests, or even family drama. I mean the internal kind, the second-guessing, the mental rehearsals, the invisible courtroom you hold in your head, preparing for trials that never come. That noise used to be constant for me. Now, it's a breeze through the trees. The creak of my porch swing when I sit with my tea. The sound of my own breath in a house that finally feels like mine. This morning, I opened all the windows. Let the air move through every room. Let the house breathe. I think homes hold memory not just in pictures or walls, but in how you carry yourself inside them. The way your feet land on the floor. The way you answer the door. For years, I walked like I was trespassing in my own life. Even after I bought this house. Even after I sanded every stair and wired every socket. But not anymore. Not since I stopped waiting for permission to exist. The binder Megan left is gone now. Not burned. Not tossed, just recycled. Shredded into a bin of scraps, turned into mulch for something new. That felt right. Because this house was never for rent. Not the wood. Not the roof. Not the heart inside it. I built this for the girl who was told don't be dramatic every time she cried. For the young woman who washed uniforms in gym sinks and filmed tutorials with a cracked phone. For the grown woman who still flinched when her mom complimented someone else louder. I didn't build this house to prove anyone wrong. I built it to live in what felt right. There's a photo now on the hallway wall taken last fall. Me, Danny, and 3 volunteers standing in front of a fixer-upper we'd just helped a single mom reclaim. I'm not centered in the photo. I didn't need to be. That day, the woman we helped told me, I saw your video. I didn't think I deserved a space of my own. Not until I saw what you made from nothing. I told her the truth. I didn't make it from nothing. I made it from everything they said didn't count. Danny jokes that I've got a waiting list now. People email asking if I offer consulting, or home tours, or renovation retreats. I haven't figured out what to do with all of it yet. That's okay. For the first time in my life, I'm not rushing toward the next emergency. I'm walking through my house in bare feet, sipping tea, and letting the light hit the floor the way it's meant to. Last night, I found a small chip in the guest room window frame. Barely noticeable. Just enough to let a draft in when it gets cold. I took out the putty knife and wood filler and fixed it. Didn't film it. Didn't post about it. Just did it because the house deserved care. And so did I. Later, I sat on the porch and watched the light flicker on again. Still the same fixture. Still the same wiring I installed all those years ago when I didn't know if I'd make it through another week. Now, it shines steady. And every so often, I see someone stop and look at the plaque under it. For every girl who is told she took up too much space. Sometimes they smile. Sometimes they just stand there. And that's enough. Because this house? This home? It's not a reward. It's not a statement. It's not an apology. It's a beginning. And I'm still here. Still sanding. Still wiring. Still choosing peace over permission. This house was never for rent. Not my space. Not my worth. Not my story. And if you're watching this, maybe you need to hear that, too. You're not too much. You're not selfish for wanting peace. You're not wrong for wanting space that feels like yours. Build it. Live in it. Keep the light on. I'll be here,